Welcome to Inspired Edinburgh. Powerful conversations helping you reconnect with your purpose. I'm Elliot Reeves and my guest today is Professor Bill Buchanan OBE. Professor Buchanan is a Scottish computer scientist who leads the Centre for Distributed Computing and Security at Edinburgh Napier University and the Cyber Academy. You're a Fellow of the BCS and the IET and have published 28 academic books and over 200 research papers. As well as regular television and radio appearances, you've been involved in a wide range of innovation and enterprise activities, including 3 successful spin-out companies and a raft of awards for teaching, research and innovation. Additionally, you were awarded an OBE in the 2017 Honours List for services to cybersecurity. Absolutely incredible. Bill, it's a tremendous honour to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for the invite.
Absolutely welcome. So it would be super if we could start at the sort of the beginning, if you like, about where you kind of grew up, what your background was like, and I suppose maybe what you were kind of like growing up.
Well, I'm a Falkirk Baring, and I was born in the 1960s. A great generation, I think. Caused a lot of problems, but have done a lot of good too. I grew up in an area near Victoria Park in Falkirk. I had a very happy life there. Lots of kids around at that time. We played outdoors all the time, played football and so on. And then I moved to Hall Glen, and it's an area on the outskirts of Falkirk. Mm-hmm. I attended Graham High School at the time, and then my father and my grandfather were both electricians. Mm-hmm. So it just seemed the natural thing to be able to move into electrical engineering. I remember my dad showing me how to wire a plug. I do remember him showing me how to bare the wires, and at one time there wasn't a little plastic bit on the plug sockets at that time for the pins. It showed me how to wire an ad hoc electrical connection onto the plug and push it in. Mm-hmm. It's not really recommended these days, but I have the sight of lots of plug sockets really fitted into lots of sources, electrical sources fitted into a single socket. So I just naturally moved into being an electrician. It just seemed to be the thing. At that time, university education in general really just stopped after a certain age, and there was no thoughts in the family that I would ever go to university, or anybody in the family would ever achieve at that type of level. Mm-hmm. So I went to work in the ICI in Grangemouth. It isn't there anymore, but it was a lovely little dye works. They made organic dyes. And the strange thing about being at the ICI, apart from moving around from, as they called, from shed to shed, the shed was where they made the different types of dyes. Mm-hmm. You could actually tell where someone worked because of the colour of their face and the colour of their overalls. Monastrals was green, so if someone had a green face, they worked in Monastrals. If they had a blue face, then they worked in Primadines. So that was interesting because you would sit down and the tradesmen at the time would sit and talk to you about their whole life and their thoughts and dreams. And so on. But I think at that time, really I became aware that there was other things that were interesting and the possibilities were there, and I could only see that being an electrician would really constrain my world and what I could look into. And then I saw this little plastic device with 3 legs on it, called a transistor, and it had a base, a collector and an emitter, and they were quite big things at mm-hmm. the time, and they replaced things that were called valves, big electronic devices about this size and used to see them in TVs. And the transistor was just wonderful. The opportunity to learn and to be able to control systems through these transistors was just a new world to me. And in the place they had the north site and the south site. The south site of the plant was the older type factory. That everything was really quite manual in its setup. But on the north side, they had an amazing thing. It was quite clean, and it was very much process-driven automation. There was more electronics in that site, and they had this amazing thing called a computer. And the computer was run by these people with white coats, and they just seemed from a different world. So as an electrician, we run the cables, we provided the supply, and then we provided the interface to the electronics. And then on the other side, there was this clean area which had a computer and was run by these alien people. And it just seemed such a wonderful world. And a new trade came along called an instrument artificer. And it was these people who were responsible for creating the electronics and the control. The electricians still had their role of providing the power and the control and making sure the equipment was safe. But this new trade came along, and they were responsible for controlling to make sure that the process actually worked correctly. And it just seemed an amazing new advancement. And I couldn't see, as an electrician, how I could get into this new area of transistors and electronics. And computers just seemed way beyond anyone. I mean, this was for space alien creatures who had white coats, that were lab technicians, and probably the power of those computers now would be probably less than you would have in your fridge, for example, a smart fridge. But it just seemed an amazing world. So I decided that I was going to leave and that I would go and study. Before then, I came through to Edinburgh with a great friend. We studied at college in Falkirk. We had a day release system. For 1 year, we spent our time. This was when we had 4 years apprenticeships. And for the first year, we spent our time in college, and we had such fun meeting new people from new backgrounds and so on. We had apprentices from the BP in Grangemouth. We had apprentices from Burroughs, which was a computer company in Cumbernauld or Cumbernauld.
Yes.
And we were all fused together for 1 year, and we really made great friends. After that, we had day release, where we'd go to college for 1 day a year. And I must admit, I wasn't the most diligent of studiers. I was disruptive at school, and I hate to say that. But I was always polite, and I was never nasty or evil in anything that I ever did. But I was a very disruptive force. I couldn't be locked down really for anything. But I've always loved codes and ciphers and maths and so on. But I didn't stick in probably as much as I could have. So myself and my friend came through to Edinburgh, and it was the most wonderful place that I think I've ever saw in my life. We arrived in Edinburgh probably on the coldest November day that you could ever imagine. You know how in Edinburgh that the coldness bites sometimes, but I love Edinburgh in the winter time, and I think it's one of the best times, but it really bites. We're beside the sea, which is great because you can pop down to the beach whenever you want. Wow, that's amazing. You can have any type of beach that you want, a lovely beach, a sheltered beach. But it was probably the coldest day that I think I've ever felt. I walked up through Waverley steps up into Princess Street, and I saw this most amazing, fantastic landscape that I've never ever lost my love of Edinburgh. And it was biting cold, and you get hit by that wind that just goes often east to west or west to east. The east to west is coming right off the sea, and you'll get hit by that blast, and it takes your air away. I think they buffer it a little bit more, but the majesticness and I just fell head over heels with the city. And I've never lost that love of this beautiful, cultured city. So I fell head over heels, and I just knew that I had to come here and live. And I think the city has really changed so much, even since then. It has a gutsiness and a confidence in itself to really make a place in the world. So I came through to Edinburgh. I studied at Napier to do a degree in communication engineering. It was just a step too far to do computer systems. So I did communication engineering and electronics. It was a 5-year honours degree with a placement in the middle, which was excellent because you could actually see what real industry was like. Those 2 placements in there, and really opened up my eyes to the possibilities. We did analog electronics, but even in the time of studying the course, you could really see electronics developing towards integrated circuits, towards digitization, away from analog communications, radio waves, AM, FM, towards digital communications, and that whole industry changed. And really the 70s and then the 80s, you could see every single day there was something new that was coming along, something new for you to get into, something interesting. So I studied the course, and teaching looked to be interesting. I was so inspired by some of the lecturers on the course, all different in their approach, and I think that's what's good about academia. One lecturer does one thing and another lecturer does another, but the kindness and the support of some of the lecturers was just inspirational. I think people will often look back to their teachers. For me, it was my biology teacher, who we listened to every single word they say. I didn't end up studying biology, but he made the subject interesting, and we listened intensely. He was open, he listened to questions and so on. So I think we can be inspired by our teachers. We can see what they do wrong, and we can see how they do things better, but I think teaching is such a noble thing to do, and to share knowledge, but also to learn as much from your pupils, your peers, who become great in their own way, and you share in that success. You have done one thing that you didn't know about, you said one thing, and someone changes their whole career. It might be for the worst or it might be for the better, but you have a chance to influence someone's life. So teaching just seemed a natural thing for me to do. I enjoyed doing research. I enjoyed the freedom that an academic has to not be constrained in things, to really look into new areas, and really never be forced to be able to think in a certain way. But the wonder of just dealing with new students every year, and some wonderful students and some not so wonderful students that become great individuals and people, is just an opportunity to meet graduates that I knew 20 years ago, and for them still to be speaking to you and to respect what you've done is just a wonderful opportunity. So that's generally the way, and I feel so kind of privileged. I just hop on the 45 bus, takes me 10 minutes, and I'm walking in the shadow of John Napier. In my area, John Napier created logarithms. I think he's a rather forgotten son in Edinburgh, but he created logarithms and or discovered logarithms. And a lot of my work involves the breaking of logarithms or protecting privacy and security using logarithms. Have changed to discrete logarithms, but they've moved on. So it's just a natural thing for me to do, and I just love I love being in academia.
Yeah, that's a fantastic introduction and very inspiring. Thank you. One of the things that I think I find most fascinating is the fact that when you began your journey, the industry in which you operated in is probably in no way comparable to what it's like nowadays. The amount of transformation that's gone on in technology. How have you remained, I suppose, the apex of the industry for that long in such a changing environment?
Well, I think I was very lucky to start in electrical engineering. I have a core of mathematics. I have core knowledge of understanding of things. I think employ an engineer or a mathematician and you'll be able to move them into lots of different areas. So I always had that core knowledge of understanding how a computer works, right down to the silicon. And I understood silicon transistors up into integrated circuits, up into processors, up into systems, up into communications. And that's the way we've generally looked at the internet, with these levels of abstraction. And it's knowing at what level to be able to look at something and then to see it at that abstraction level is something that I've always been able to do. And it's really to zoom in or to zoom out, but to know if you have a fault with your computer, then it's unlikely to be the electrical wires or the connector that you're using. It's most likely that you haven't set up your IP address, so you look at it in terms of a network connection. Or if your software isn't working and you can't connect to social media, there's a very good chance it's to do with your password and working at the service layer. But sometimes you need to get down into that transistor layer or the circuits and so on. So I think I had a very good core knowledge of understanding of systems, and I'm always drawing diagrams for my students. We draw diagrams, we point at things, and we try and abstract. And when I give lectures, you'll find when I talk about Bob and Alice and Eve, who are really important people in security, I draw them. So I'm a very abstract. I'm not an artist like my wife or my one of my sons, but I do respect what they do, and I love that bridge between art and science. I think the two of them, when they work together, they are just amazing. And I think the crossover is schematics and diagrams and abstraction, and really trying to bring new viewpoints, because I write lots of words, but most of the words that I write have a diagram, because more and more increasingly we're looking on the internet at diagrams, and one picture paints one picture is better than many words. So I've generally evolved, and I think the core principles have always been the same in computing. We still use what's called von Neumann's architecture. It sounds boring, but a guy called von Neumann created this architecture for computers, and we've basically stuck with it. Intel created the first processor, and we've basically stuck with it. So you actually find very little is new. It's just different in the way we use it. The one thing that's changed is that we've moved from a geek area. So to get into the internet and computers, you had to be a geek. You had to learn a basic or C++ or something like that, and it was our domain, and it was the barrier towards it. So in healthcare, we were always faced with the problem, well, my mum won't use a computer. She can't log in. You can't expect her to manage her health record and things. And then the iPad came along, and that argument evaporated. My mum is the best advocate of the iPad that you'll find anywhere on the planet. I gave her an iPad when we went on a flight to the US once, and she's never, it's probably the one thing that she wouldn't want to ever ever lose. So that barrier of technology has been really broken down, and I think that's a great thing. And the way that we now live our lives, there are a lot of bad things on the internet, a lot of evil, a lot of crime and horrible things. But my goodness, it's creating a new world which is quite wonderful, that doesn't respect boundaries and borders and legislation and laws and clamping down on people's ideas and so on. So it is a platform for individuals to say how they feel. Sometimes that isn't very nice, but from the majority it is a way for them to keep in contact with people, to share friends, and it's really, we're building a new world within the space. So generally I think the important thing in computer science is always to be able to learn. I have a very strong coding background. I love coding, and I would never want to leave that. One thing I was worried about when I was an electrician is that what happened if I became a charge hand or a foreman, or I moved into management. I would lose my technical skills, and to lose your technical skills to me is that you've actually lost the thing that makes you special. I can create, an artist paints a picture, I can write a Python program, and to me that is creating in the same way, and then I document it, and then I lecture on it, and it's an artifact. So I as a geek, create, and it's different from it, but it's my opportunity to be able to do things, to contribute. I don't see any point in repeating what everyone else has said about something. There is a lot said on the internet, and if people want to read a Wikipedia page, then it's fine. It doesn't have a soul and a heart and a passion. What I do is I present on things that I love and I really enjoy, and I hope when my students get involved in the subjects, they also can see that there's a passion there. I'm just not watching the clock. I do want to learn from them and to learn new things and to keep evolving. So the internet really has changed so much, and the cloud is probably the greatest invention ever.
Do you think so?
Transistor, wheel, car, the cloud. I mean, really, we're just at the start. This is just the first baby steps. Most of the data that was produced on the internet was just produced in the last couple of years, and it's just a little tiny. We'll be able to document every single minute of our lives. That's scary. But when a baby is born, we take pictures, we send on WhatsApp, we share with our friends now. We're not sharing possibly as much on Facebook and telling the world and so on. We in WhatsApp allows us to say these are our friends and these are people we trust, and we communicate in a way that has been difficult in the past. And we could photograph and document virtually how we felt on a rainy Tuesday in August in 2016, how depressed we were, what we searched for in Google. It's a scary world, but you can't opt out. It is our world now, and we are now part of the internet. The internet isn't a bunch of computers anymore. It's an interconnection of us.
Yes.
And we need to learn how we live in this world. We need to learn how our etiquette, how to be polite, how to interact with each other in a civil way, because there are so many organisations watching us, trying to understand, and they know exactly how we think and feel, and they want to make money from us. So as a computer scientist who does computer security, one of my roles is to be able to protect individuals and citizens and represent them and create research which looks after them as much as for the large organisations.
So what I'm really interested in is how cybersecurity became your specialism. and I suppose the nature of the work that you are spending most of your time on at the moment.
I could see from a long way off that this was going to be one of the greatest industries in the world. And it took a long time to bring people around. I proposed a program for computer security, and they said, show me the jobs. And I said, I can't point to the Scotsman and say, here is a job and there's a salary. I can't just now, because this role really hasn't been created yet. People are doing little bits and pieces of it, but I can assure you that this is going to be the biggest industry ever, one of the most important ever. The concept of firewalls is going, data is now key. And I could see we work very closely with industries in Edinburgh. Mm-hmm. We could see that they were starting to recruit very heavily in networking. The banks were transforming themselves into tech companies. They were recruiting tech graduates into the banks. So we can see almost to the minute where the skills are required and where the industry is moving, because they will be recruiting our graduates and telling us exactly what skills that they require. So we could see a long way off that the networking boom, the plugging in of cables, was moving away, and it was all about making sure that firewalls were secure. Viruses were happening. Everybody had a virus in the 2000 period, my doom and so on. And you could just see that it was like the Wild West. It was like the days of the transistor. The opportunities were there. People moved quickly. Companies moved quickly. They grabbed the opportunities. So we could see at that time that there was a move away from hardware towards software. And that has generally moved. So the systems that we looked at, and that we knew that we were never strong on law and ethics and on more corporate security and so on. We were techie geeks, but we loved that. We loved to do crypto and firewalls and intrusion detection systems and detecting viruses and malware and looking at code and detecting code. And that's our students. We share a passion with them. And that's the other type of student can go and take a course that covers more abstract legal, ethical sides. But we knew where our niche was, and it's ended up being a very big niche. We could also see that police forces were changing. They were moving from static forensics of examining laptops, seizing, taking back to the lab, archiving, taking a year sometimes, and then the technicians would analyse and find. We could see that was really changing. People were starting to use MacBooks more, different operating systems, Linux servers, RAID arrays, and mobile phones. iPhones and Androids, that's a different skill. The minute you turn an iPhone off, you've lost the evidence. So we could really see that police officers needed to be trained in how to seize data properly, or it would be compromised. So we worried that digital forensics at the time wasn't scientific enough. There wasn't enough due diligence in the handling and the processing and the analysis and so on. So we could see that move towards a new world, and that if you can say that now police officers, the Bobby and the Beat, now needs to be trained in how an iPhone works, or that a computer isn't just a monitor, it's the actual processor, and there's a hard disk in there. The minute you turn the computer off, you've lost evidence. So if we thought that if that was happening, then virtually every single company, every employee would really need to understand how the internet worked, at least. So we generally, and with the support of my university has never ever said no to anything, was always willing to take a risk, because I think success leads to success. If there's one thing that we can do is that we have a track record. And in research, you typically will get grants by saying, I really did some really good work here, it had great impact, it's helping solve this problem, give me some more money and then I'll do even better the next time. If you have a poor track record, then you will not get money. So one thing you do is you build up a reputation for doing good work. You also do not so good work and you bury that under the carpet. But that's what the risks are all about. Anybody in business will know you learn from your mistakes, and we're good learners. We're fast movers and we know when an opportunity will arrive. So I think computer security was always seen, and we built up a skills base for our academics. We made sure that we had core research in place, because you could be a great teacher and have great programs, but to be world renowned, internationally renowned, you need to be showing that you're publishing papers to show that you understand the barriers and you're addressing it. So we set in place innovation. We tried to address fundamental problems that were happening, put the research in place so that we had, I think academia is a bit like spinning plates. I don't know if you remember, but there used to be programs on the TV, used to be on virtually every Saturday, where there was this chap and he would put the plates on top of the poles and he would spin the plates and the plates were not got to fall off. I really think academia is spinning plates. You're teaching, you're keeping your teaching up to date, you're keeping your research up to date, you're applying for grants, you're writing papers, you're talking to industry, you're talking to employers, and then you're keeping teaching going and things like that. Yeah. So it's a bit like spinning plates, and sometimes the plates do fall, but sometimes the plates will spin very well. And I think it's knowing what is successful and keep doing what you do well. So I think you can develop and you go too wide and then you can't cover all your bases, and then it doesn't look good. You're not so good in certain areas. We've always known what we like and where we're comfortable, and to be able to support our students and our research, and especially SMEs and businesses. So that's generally the way we got in, and really we've developed our postgraduate course, GCHQ accredited, so we have the opportunity to really make sure it's fit for purpose, but we make sure that we provide our graduates go into the Edinburgh market. At one time, graduates would go to London, say, and then they would work there, maybe come back and so on. There's enough vibrancy in Edinburgh for every one of our graduates normally to get great jobs and to develop, and it's a great place for international students to come to. They adore the city generally. Every city has problems, but most of our international students just adore living and working here, and you learn so much from them. In computer security, we just need more people, smart people from all over the world to come here and make this their home and stay. Because I think the cities of the future will be built on intellect and smart people, and companies will be drawn to the places in the world that have smart people and provide the environment that people want to stay and live and bring up families and so on. And Edinburgh, I think, is the second best city in the world for quality of life. It's unfortunate it's second, but for an environment where you can walk, you can live in a city, you can find a beach, you can find a hill, you can find a bike ride through past the stream with a waterfall, and you name it, this city has really got it.
Great stuff. Excellent answer. I think before doing research for this interview, I was probably a combination of naive or ignorant as to what the actual implications of cyber attacks actually are. It would be great if you could give people, I suppose, a bit of a broader understanding as to what some of the potential implications actually are.
Okay, so I give you an example. So we all use email, and we have been doing. So email was the app that really allowed the internet to scale. So it was one thing, people had to use the internet. I remember CompuServe and AOL and hearing modems screeching and so on, and costing a lot of money, as I remember. But email was the app. So why is it in 2017 that I can't tell if it was you that really sent me an email this morning? If it has your email address, why is it in this technologically advanced era that I cannot tell if it was you? The second thing is I cannot tell if someone else has read that email. So if this was a private email between me and you, I cannot tell that somebody in Google, someone in my university, or some evil cyber criminal has actually read our emails. Someone listening on the network could have intercepted it. I cannot tell. I can tell if you send me a letter in the post. I can see that you've steamed open the letter. and it looks like the postman has had a little look in my Amazon package counter. But I still cannot tell. And I still cannot tell if somebody has modified what you said to me. Mm-hmm. If you say something nice, how do I know that somebody hasn't said, oh, well, we better not, let's change that to make it look a nasty message and so on. Mm-hmm. Let's change it so it came from this different person. So why isn't it that we are at a time that we cannot tell exactly those three things? And that is an infrastructure of trust. With a spamming email, I must receive a dozen spamming emails. I do follow them up, by the way.
Do you really?
I have a conversation with an African spam person. I actually really enjoy speaking to him.
That's incredible.
He sent me an email to say that I had won 10, that my Fatos Buchanan had died in a plane crash in Africa, and it was my relative, and he's the lawyer who's dealing with it. And the nice thing is that he's going to share, I think it's 20 million, so he's going to share 20 million US dollars with me. He'll take half, and then I'll get the other half. All I have to do is to fill in my personal details. and I have a Skype conversation with him in an African country, and I communicate with him. He keeps asking me why my phone number doesn't appear on his number, and it's because I'm using Skype, and obviously they can't tell. But I keep communicating with them. And it just shows you that these spamming emails are just becoming so prevalent. So I nearly was tricked by one. I had just cancelled my Netflix subscription. A Netflix email came in and it said, we've had a problem with your payment in your Netflix. Hopefully it was a random one that had been sent to me. Please click on this link. It had all the proper Netflix logos and so on, and the link, and I clicked on the link. It looked like a valid looking domain, because you can never be too sure if they've set up another company to do the subscription for them. You click on the link, it goes to a page that looks like Netflix, all the graphics are the same. It then asks you for your Netflix login and so on, or it could go to an Apple, I think it was an Apple login site that it went to. But the minute you put your details in, then you've lost your username and password for your iCloud. Say, if you lose that, all your passwords are stored there. If your Google will have all your details of all the systems that you log into, every single password. and obviously you have your credit card details these days. So as long as a world still exists that allows that type of crime and exposes vulnerable people to this type of crime, as we've seen from ransomware, the problems that happened, then we haven't built an internet which is fit for purpose yet.
Yeah.
So our focus is to really rebuild systems, to look at how our NHS should look in 30 years' time. And we're not going to just shut the NHS off now and then tomorrow we have a new NHS. We need a track, and we need to understand the problems and what it is that people really want to do online for their health, for example, and to try and migrate and to move and to give helpful advice. Because in things like healthcare systems, large companies tend to dominate, and then they will give you their solution and you're locked in. So we would like to break away to look at open systems, but always put the citizen right at the core of any system that's created, and their rights is fundamental. So that's our drive, is to really make sure that we look after the citizen. We put in place mechanisms that protect them, but also protect the rights of society to protect itself, because there are some evil people, there are evil things, bad things that go on the internet, and I think it's our role also to be able to understand how to detect these evil things and to help law enforcement and governments to protect their citizens as a society. But some countries, some governments would like to move completely one way. Other countries want to move the other way and give citizens complete rights. And there's a balance in the middle, and we'd be keen to really try and address that. Often to engage and to articulate the problems, because a government will say we want a backdoor in crypto, and a security professional will say no, that's not a good idea, and the government will say, well, we want it, and the security professional will say no, that isn't a good idea. And in the debate somewhere, somebody has got to put their cards on the table and actually talk a bit of tech and say you can't do it because the software that we have doesn't have any encryption keys in it. They don't exist anywhere. Only on this machine and this machine do the encryption keys have it. I, who run WhatsApp, don't have the encryption keys. You need to understand that we now have the opportunity for two machines, two people to talk to each other privately without anyone else in the whole world to be able to be involved. And mathematically, it is impossible to break the bond between the two people. And I think that debate hasn't happened. I went down to the House of Commons just before Christmas there for the internet privacy bill that went through very quickly. No debate. And I did talk about Bob and Alice in the House of Commons to a committee, and I did talk about public key and crypto, and I did say that terrorists are extremely tech savvy, and they know exactly what they're doing, they know exactly what to use and so on, and whatever's put in place, they will find a way around it. So I think generally we've created a system, an internet that really has got up and running. And I keep saying to my students, what an opportunity you've got. We booted up the internet, we got it running, but it's a disaster. But lots of people are using it, and it's so fundamental, and it's the biggest industry ever. But now you go ahead and fix it. We're going to teach you the techniques to be able to understand how you take a system from where it is now and where it should be. So why does a system ask me for my password? And I pass my password along the line, and they store my password on another system, and I can't tell how they're storing it. why can't I just say, well, this is my identity. Give me a puzzle to solve. How tall am I? 6 feet. I know that. Where was I born? Falkirk, and so on. So systems really need to be a bit more savvy about the information that they store, and more and more citizens should be given their own data back and their own identity back, and to be able to define. So I went down to London yesterday. I used my wallet with my EasyJet booking. So I just showed my mobile phone. What wonderful! I don't have to carry bits of paper now. And it reminds me my flight, which was 2.5 hours late to leave. didn't predict that. But then I flashed my driving license, which is in my old wallet and so on. That's my ID. There you go. That's me. And you go, what? Wow. That photo ID in a wallet is credible.
Yeah.
Is it really? And they're so busy. You're flashing IDs and stuff like that. And you go, what? That is an old 20th century method. Why can't I have an ID, one ID that says I am who I am? When I went to vote for the Scottish independence election, I went in, probably one of the most fundamental votes that I've ever seen in my whole life. Okay, I won't say how I voted, but I wanted to vote. And I went into my polling station, and they said, I'm sorry. I went to Juniper Green, and they said, I'm sorry, you don't exist here. I go, what? We've got you down as Leith. I go, what? I want to vote, please.
Yeah.
I pay my taxes. This is the most fundamental election that's happened. I've listened to every single debate about it. I understand this. When I'm voting for here, my one vote probably wouldn't have made any difference, but it was a fundamental right in this world. And they said, you don't exist. And so I contacted and I phoned, and I was still in the polling station. My wife had already voted, and so, but I was there. And I was on the line. I said, well, what's your name? Yeah, well, you exist in Leith. I don't exist in Leith. Mm-hmm. I'm a professor. I live here. I've lived here. I moved from there. I've never lived in Leith. Oh, yeah. And you're 20 odd years old. I'm not. My son lives in Leith just now. He came back from America. He lives in Leith, and I think you've got him. Oh dear. I made the mistake of calling my son the same name as me. I give any advice to anybody not to do that. It was a tradition in our family. My dad was called Billy William. My grandfather was also called Bill William. And we passed the name down, so my first son was always going to be called Billy, Bill, William, and so on. So why is it a system that when you register, it takes William Buchanan and say, well, he exists in Juniper Green, that's obviously him, doesn't check the age or the profile or anything, and moves them down to Leith. And then that is 19th century. And I put an X in a box now, and we have a confusing thing of 1, 2, 3, 4, but we'll not go there. And I really think things like elections could be transformed through electronics, but cryptography, but obviously there needs a lot more trust to be built into the system. So I just can't understand why in this world that our ID, which is so fundamental to us, because we are, like it or not, we all exist. The ID is often based on a piece of knowledge, such as your mother's maiden name. These days, that can be easily discovered. So a lot of systems are flawed in terms of what they base your ID on, what football team you support, where your first school was, when you were born, and so on. That might have been a secret 20 years ago, but anybody can find that out now. So in order to to transform public services and to put things back into the hands of citizens, then you really need to own your own ID, you need to be comfortable with it. You need to define how your ID is used and who's allowed to use it. And too often our ID is contained in lots of different places. Why do you get asked for your email address every single time you go to the hospital and you have to write it out very carefully? Why can't that be stored somewhere on your telephone number somewhere? And you don't want that to be public knowledge, but you want to be able to trust certain people to reveal certain bits of your identity. So I think public sector really needs to transform the whole concept of identity. Cryptography has a lot of the answers, but for some reason cryptography tends to be flawed in its approach. There tends not to be a debate. If you look at the Named Person Act in Scotland, I was involved with it when it was GIRFEC, one of the worst acronyms ever. Get it right for every child, GIRFEC. It's a really wacky, it's just, you can just see it as a banner headline, get into GIRFEC. What's that? And GIRFEC was a fantastic thing. It's really to look at the risks that were caused through SOAM, of not sharing information about the risks around a child and vulnerable people. So it had great expectations. I was part of lots of meetings we put forward. There was lots of community agencies and the NHS and there was a real emphasis, and then for some reason it lost its way, and then parents said, what is the named person? Well, your child has a responsible person who will look after them. You go, what? You don't trust us to look after our kids? We know that they've got a bruise. Why do you need this? Oh, we need this because you might be doing something bad to it. We need to share. But who's the named person? We can't tell you. But who will they be, and how will they pass? And when do they get sent, and how do they get sent? Oh, we're not telling you. You go, what? This is our kids.
Yeah.
We're responsible for them. We love them. And you're saying, and what they did was that they didn't inform. They went quiet, and they didn't allow the citizens to be part of the debate in this. There was one example I saw that I think a child had been sucking their thumb at school, a little child, and the school I think had reported that the child was sucking the thumb. I mean, I know lots of people I've known that have revealed to me, and there is nothing wrong with that. It's a comfort blanket, and it's a very natural thing, and that was reported. I don't know if it's true or not, but it was reported that information would be passed on to the named person from the school, and that really worries me, because that becomes a Big Brother society, that you're being watched all the time. Everything is every little red flag. Is that a risk? Do you accumulate lots of red flags and then it becomes a big risk, or is every little bruise that you see in a child? Certainly, what I know of kids, they'll fall downstairs and they'll bash their heads against things, and they'll do, and they're just special in doing, and the parents will always be the most trusted to look after them, and the state doesn't have a great track record in looking after kids. One thing that amazes me, and my grandson has a paper red book that should be well known to most parents, and it's the most wonderful thing. You can see exactly where your child should be any given time, so you don't have to go to the internet, you don't have to ask. And parents are intelligent people that actually can understand and make reasoned judgments. You can see exactly where your head's your child's head is in the right size, and so on. And in Scotland, we had a company. There's a company called Cybersecurity, who have a development centre in Edinburgh. Their headquarters is in Isle of Skye, and they had this vision that they've kept with to create an electronic red book for a child. You go, wow, that's fantastic. The citizen, for the one true piece of citizen-owned health is the red book, because the mother and the father will have it and will give it to the GP or the professional. It's the one of the best examples in healthcare of something that is truly citizen focused, that they have control and ownership of. Mm-hmm. So the natural step is to move it online with electronics, so it remembers you, because a piece of paper won't ring you up and say your child needs immunised next week or you've been late for an immunisation. We'll give you one more chance, and then we'll get a bit worried about you. And it just seemed a natural thing, and they've been at this, and they had to go all the way down to London for London to adopt it as a whole city of 8 million people, that every single child in London has an e-red book. And that was because somebody stood up and said, well, our children are our most important assets. We need to look after them. We need to make sure that we understand and we're making judgments, and we're using data for them, and we're seeing where there are areas of deprivation and problems and things like that. So they went down to London, and now every child in London has an e-red book, and I don't think it's been adopted in Scotland, because I don't think anyone stood up and said Edinburgh needs e-red book. Our kids, we've got to make sure that they grow up healthy and they're educated, and we need to look after them, and an electronic red book is the way that we trust the parents. But if there are problems, we have a record, and sometimes the problem might be parents, sometimes the problem might be health. So you can see that a child hasn't been visited by a health professional, and the child was at risk for 2 months, ring a flag and say there's a problem here. So I think it works on both sides, and that we can track. We were lucky to work with companies who look at integrated healthcare, and you can see the opportunities with the cloud. You can find out if someone has been visited by someone and for how long, and whether they observed if there was any problems in the home environment and so on. So I think the whole concept of identity is going to become a key part. Luckily, in Scotland we have some really great companies. We have MyCard in Edinburgh, who have a very highly trusted system for checking ID and continually checking it. We also have companies who are citizen focused in creating data stores that citizens own, and then have what are called APIs that allow applications to dig into that data as required.
Excellent. I'm really, I suppose, interested to hear your thoughts on this. You've been incredibly successful in your work. You've achieved, I suppose, what many would perceive to be a level of mastery in the work that you do, which kind of leads me to think that it's more than simply work or a career, and is probably tied more to kind of mission and purpose. What do you feel the thing is that's kind of driven you to be as successful as you have been, and do you think it is linked to a sort of a deeper purpose?
I think, I'm very lucky. I have a wonderful family. I live in a wonderful city. I teach and research the most wonderful area that I find interesting. I have a work-life balance that kind of works. I love writing. I wrote lots of books, and then I wrote lots of code, and I created websites, and I'm going back to writing books again. because I actually found that the way that you do books is the wrong way around. You write a book and then you put up the website and things like that's the wrong way. For many years I created a website and the whole infrastructure, and I created all of the demonstrators and the techniques and the videos and the lectures and so on, and then I write the book. And I thought that's the way to do it. You spend a lot of time creating the artifacts and getting and building your skills up and articulating and understanding, and once you've done a lecture a few times, you actually know what goes in and what doesn't and what the problems are, and then you write the book. So I've actually come to the point now, and I've got quite a few books coming up, and I actually really enjoy doing them now, and I do them very quickly because I've already done the groundwork and so on. So I'm very lucky that I actually teach and research into something that I really desperately love, and I'm comfortable as a techie geek, and I don't have to be a politician, and I don't want to be a politician, and I'm really switched off by politics, but I'm really passionate about some of the injustices, and I'm a real, I hate to see people being impolite. Politeness was something, and manners was something that I was brought up with, and I want that, and everybody to be respected. I don't like when big companies swamp small companies. I like to be David against Goliath. I think if I felt that I was in a privileged position, and I always felt that I had lots of resources, and I had lots of research money, and I had so many papers, and I always got a privilege. If I want a grant, I'll get a grant, and if I want a PhD studentship, then I'll give that. To me, that doesn't work. I wouldn't want to be, because you become lazy and you don't feel eager, and it doesn't feel good when you get something. If you feel that you're David against Goliath, then when you win, you feel good, because you've got it probably on the back of something that you've done right, not because of the opportunity. So I like the gutsiness of my university. I like the gutsiness of Edinburgh. Mm-hmm. I like the gutsiness of Scotland. It's a Falkirk bearing inside me, and Falkirk as a football team didn't win all the time. But that's great. That's great. We played well, and we won sometimes. And I think I've always grown up with that feeling that that I tried, did better, must do better the next time. And when you don't get a grant, and you just know that it's because of something else that hasn't, and because of some privilege, something that has benefited something else, you lick your wounds and you move on, and you try not for it to affect your staff and make them feel difficult. You have a dream, a vision, and you crumble a bit. But in terms of people that you interface with, let's be twice as strong. Let's go out there and let's do better the next time. Our vision, our dream is really what we want. And if healthcare doesn't work for these people, we know that for a fact, and we're trying to improve that. If we haven't articulated what it is we're trying to do here, then I've failed. Mm-hmm. But it's not the failure of the team and so on. So I think we've always had general roadmaps to know exactly where the end result will be, and it's a long track. Impact takes 10 years to come through in research. And people, when we first got into information sharing in health, people said, Microsoft have done that. IBM do that. Why are you doing this? At the time, we used to go down to London, and there was an initiative called Connecting for Health. There was £15 billion invested in Connecting for Health to transform healthcare, just healthcare, in the UK. And we would go along to meetings, and we had a small grant. We worked with some great people in Imperial College in Chelsea and Westminster Hospital. And there was Connecting for Health people there. And it almost felt that, why are you doing this? You have a little bits of money, and you're doing RFID and for medical devices, and you're creating a patient cloud that gives the data to the patient and lets them control it and defines the rights. Why are you doing that? We've got 15 billion. Oh, don't need this at all. And they Connecting for Health, the whole contract was cancelled with zero impact. If you look at the website now, it's a horrendous, horrible mess. And it just shows that you can throw money at people, and lots of times it doesn't stick. Yeah. I'm keen that you give a little bit of money to someone and let them prove and let them show, and then keep building along the way. Keep refining. So if there's one thing that we can do, is to be able to stand up for little companies, individuals. Investors invest in people. So these days, the days of the 20-page business plans and 5-year projections are gone. Not even Richard Branson can say that in 5 years his company is guaranteed to make 5 million. No one can say that. So the days of saying that you're a really smart person, you are so dedicated, this is your passion, this is where you want to be, I'll give you some money because I believe in you, and you also have, you can articulate the problem that you're trying to solve. To me, I'd put my money behind people like that than I would behind IBM or Google solving the next great problem, because they become big, massive entities. Their R&D becomes R&D by committee. They're not taking risks anymore. They're not having to sell the mortgage of their house to be able to survive. They're not going round investors. They're not prototyping in their own time and weekends and evenings. So I think our future is really will be based on, especially the risks that we now see around the EU exit. We've got to support our small companies. We've got to make this an attractive place for entrepreneurs and innovators and tech geeks. There was once a quote that says, Edinburgh is a great place because it's a place that geeks and people with money can share and want to be a place that they both want to live. And to me, that's Shangri-La. It's not a place of money, and it is, and it's not a place of lots of geeks sitting in cafes with their laptops. It's a place that they both want to exist in, and that provides them with the same quality of life that they want for their kids. And I think that's special. I've got a lot of I think the way that London does things is quite amazing. We've always found, by going down to London, there's always been somebody that's willing to take a risk, that has a vision, that has the support. And in London, you'll get rally around, you'll get enough support. They know that the next great idea needs to be born in their city, that needs to be part, because they grow companies and they invest, and as the big companies become bloated or they get taken over or they die, and then new companies come along. If you don't have those new companies, you don't have an economy, you don't have a healthcare system anymore. So I think innovation has got to be the number one thing, and it's good quality jobs, it's high quality, there's education, and Edinburgh really has all those attributes. I think it's the most educated city in the whole of the UK. 54% have a degree or above, but it has a problem. It has problems in the outskirts, and Edinburgh needs to understand there is a city for all, and that while it grows its economy, it needs to understand what are the problems in certain areas of Edinburgh and to address them. I'd certainly like to see more of an approach around economic development based on cities rather than countries, say, because the ecosystem of a city should be self-sustaining. Linlithgow, even Falkirk, towns around Edinburgh thrive on Edinburgh, and it's important that the city thrives. It's important that Glasgow thrives, and Dundee and Aberdeen. Our ecosystem is increasingly based around a city, and I'd love to see our city leaders take ownership, and I'm so pleased that we're seeing the city deal happening where there'll be a lot of money invested in innovation, and I just hope none of it is wasted. Every single pound goes to economic development and addressing the problems that Edinburgh has. No city is ever perfect in any way, and it will have its problems, but it's a relatively safe city. It's an educated, cultured city. It's a confident city, and it's one that you never find a problem in inviting people to. You want a taxi to the station? No, I'll walk. No, it's raining. No, I'll walk. and that's special. Never for 1 minute has Edinburgh disappointed us. And to go to my university, to be based up at Craiglocker 1 minute, which was the place that Wilfred Owen frequented, and the beauty of Craiglocker is wonderful. But to walk through John Napier's tower every day of the working week is just a privilege, to know that intellect was there, and that Edinburgh was known across the world for showing people how education could build an economy and help and support, and to show that there wasn't barriers there to it is something that I think is fairly unique about the city. It's not too big, it's not too small, just about right. And everywhere I look, there's for sales, there's sold signs, there's building of new houses, there's building of businesses and so on. And I really just hope that our leaders, there was once going to be a motorway right through the Grassmarket and right past Holyrood.
Really?
They said, we need a motorway like Glasgow. That's great. We'll put it right past the not the Grassmarket, the Meadows, sorry. That would be strange. We'll put it through the Meadows, a big motorway, and we'll just get rid of the Meadows. We don't need parks and things like that anymore. And we'll put it right along Holyrood, and we'll have a big motorway, and that will solve the problems. And good on Edinburgh. They didn't do anything, and I think that's something that Edinburgh has done well. In Glasgow, there was all these eager people to change and to transform with great intentions that kind of got lost along the way. But they said we need to get rid of the slums and we need to knock down tenements and so on. And they went ahead and they did it, and it wasn't successful. At Edinburgh, they kind of hummed and they hawed and, let's do it, let's have another committee, and let's have another committee. So I think Edinburgh benefited from the lack of action, but I really hope now that the leaders of Edinburgh, and especially the civic community and the businesses in Edinburgh, take ownership of it. And we have great innovation centres in Edinburgh, we have great universities, we have health, we have some of the best medicine in the whole world, we have finance, we have an ecosystem that can be self-sustaining, but it does need the big markets of the world. It does. When you innovate in Edinburgh, you can prototype and you can test it here. We worked with Police Scotland to do some of our digital forensics work, but we knew that once it was successful here, we had to go to London to work with law enforcement agencies there and into the US. So I think as an ecosystem, it works here, and I think we need to break down barriers for SMEs and innovators into the public sector more, and it should be by default that the public sector should be aiming to disrupt, to change existing ways, to not take the status quo ever as the right way, to allow ideas to foster, to allow people that take risks to be supported no matter what level they're at. Innovation will come from the lowest level that you might find, the most inexperienced person. I love listening to kids on trains. I was on a train yesterday and a child said, why don't gingerbread men have ears? He was eating a gingerbread man and he got, wow. And the mum was trying to explain why gingerbread men didn't have ears. And he just kept asking, how are all the food in the world made? And she just kept answering. It was wonderful. There's lots of different food, and it's made in lots of different ways. Ask me about different types of food, and I'll tell you how it's made. And I have real faith in parenthood and families when a mother on a busy train going to Stansted Airport is quite willing to discuss as a peer with her child about whether gingerbread men, why they don't have ears, and she did explain it because of the mold and things like that, and then she was quite willing to debate with him. She wanted to keep him from falling asleep actually, but he just kept incessantly asking questions for her, and she kept answering in a calm, considerate tone. And I think we kind of lose that spirit of asking questions. For some reason we get it beaten out of us. We do ciphers for kids and they adore them. The first time we did it, we were so worried. We give them a Caesar cipher, one of the first ciphers. You move the letters of the alphabet by a certain amount, and then it's easily crackable. There's only 25 codes and so on. But humans are very good at solving it. So we did our first event with kids, and we were so worried because it was like maths and difficult things, while we were playing games in other workshops and really fun, and let's do an internet-enabled fridge and stuff like that. We were giving them, and it wasn't even on a computer, it was on bits of paper, and we had them on desk, and this is going to be a complete and absolute disaster. And they loved it, they adored it, and the school has came back every single year since, and they actually talk about the time, and now we do it in more of a scale, and we have lots of different codes. We have one called a rail code. You have 3 rails, say, you write the cipher across the rails in a zigzag fashion, and you read the cipher back again. Kids get it. You don't have to tell the kids, and especially when they work in teams, especially girls for some reason are really good at working together on ciphers and very diligent and hard working. The boys are on to challenge 15 and trying to hack the system. The girls are saying, can we move on to the next challenge? You see the difference in the approach from them. But they have an actual ability. There was one chap we saw, and we give him a rail code, which is quite a complex thing to solve. Mm-hmm. And he said the answer almost instantly, and we said, how did you do that? I don't know. And we give him another one, and he goes, that's the answer. And honestly, how did you do that? I don't know. I look at it, and I can tell, and I go, wow. When we crack ciphers, our students ask, what's the method I should use here? And we go, well, work it out yourself, and whatever you're comfortable with, whether it's long, do that. Do it that way, because that's the way that you solve. And you find many jobs that we're moving towards are all about problem solving and taking complex problems and trying to find solutions for them. So I think sometimes we lose our childish creativity that way. Why is the sky blue? Why does it rain and then it's sunshine?
Yeah.
How did that happen? When I came here, it was a deluge, and then when I appeared at the door, it was sunshine. How does that happen? The weather forecast told me that, but why did it do that? And why at that specific time? Just because there's a low pressure in Ireland? Honestly, why did it do that? So I think we just need to probably reconnect with our childlike creativity.
Yeah.
You'll see some of the best paintings and drawings that you'll ever get are done by children. They have fun, they know how to abstract and simplify things. That's Daddy. Because he has a pipe in his mouth or he has a hat on. And so I think if there was more creativity in creating systems and more disruption and starting from fresh and looking at it as a whole and from the outside and knowing where you're going, then I think our systems would be much better designed.
Yeah, definitely. How would you like to be remembered? What would you like your legacy to be?
That's difficult. I mean, in the best way, we'd like to create a blueprint for health and social care in the UK. That's 10, 20, 30, 100 years in the future. We've set in motion some things that we think is the right way. Data sharing is one of the most fundamental problems in many of our public sector areas. If you have a large database which stores all the information, your taxman can be looking at your health record and your GP can look at your tax returns. That's a nightmare scenario for us. So our research has put in place ways that we can actually assess risks, identify them. We make sure that data is protected and it's credible. And then we look at how we can actually share information on different types of events and understanding there are different roles involved. Because really you can map this complex infrastructure and actually define that a clinician who's involved with a patient should have certain rights, but a clinician from another hospital has different rights. So just because you log in as a clinician doesn't give you rights exactly to the patient records. In fact, should fundamentally the patient own the data? So we've seen, I mean, I observed the healthcare system from afar with my mother and father-in-law, and the route they took through, amazing professionals, but really some of the processes involved really weren't the best, and we never felt that we were part of their treatment at all. We'd run home from the hospital and check up online for a certain medication that they had been given, because we knew that my mum-in-law was highly allergic to penicillin, and we'd run home and look up the medication. So we never really felt part of that, and some of the things we've tried to put in place try to address some of the problems to make sure that the patient pathway is understood and the risks that are involved. And like it or not, citizens, families become 24/7 carers and have as much right to know that something has happened than anyone else, and to be able to understand what the implications are and so on. So as a legacy, I'd be keen that our 3 amazing spin-out companies became the next Skyscanner and become enormously successful and showcase that Edinburgh has been an amazing incubator place for them and has given them the best start in life without ever getting in the way, and given them the people that they need for the business and the support, but giving them the freedom to grow to wherever they have. And Skyscanner is just such an inspirational company
Yeah.
continues to be. But there are so many companies in Codebase, that kind of gutsy. They call it a warrior spirit in Scotland,
Yeah.
and I get that. We're kind of like a warrior, and I think if you lose that spirit, then you're not taking, everything's becoming A to B, and it's all obvious. So I think for the Spinets to become successful, and for some of our research, for our things in law enforcement, we hope that some of the things we can do can catch bad people. So some of the things we did in digital forensics is that we can actually detect when there is bad contraband around, many hundreds of times faster than existing tools that there are on the market. We hope that our companies become extremely successful, and that some of our research really has that strong impact. But to help in some way to improve health and social care is something that I think as a country we face. How we can make sure that there isn't a Windows XP machine sitting on a desktop in the Highlands somewhere that brings down the NHS because it has a bit of ransomware. We need to understand that we now have a critical infrastructure, and the critical infrastructure is the internet and the public sector, public services that we're creating.
Fantastic. Great answer. Bill, it's been a genuine honour speaking to you. I've absolutely loved it.
Thank you.
Some incredible insights, and just, truly inspirational.
Good. Thank you.
Some of the things you said about Edinburgh as well, just...
Is that
great.
okay?
Yeah, absolutely brilliant.
Good.
Bill, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.